Okay, you lot, so it is time for a tier list. Again, like with tier list, as you know, all of these are subjective, and again, the final judgment is up to you, right? A lot of people have a lot of different playstyles. Some of you might play meta, some of you might play waifu, right? It really depends on how you're playing the game, but I'm gonna be making two tier lists. This one will be for PvE only. This means that we're ranking essentially every unit in the game without touching PvP at all, and then I'll make a separate tier list for PvP only without touching PvE at all, right? So for reference, I do currently have every single unit unlocked. Every single unit is powered up to level 80, and I have tested every single unit in the game in various pieces of content just to give a more accurate review, right? I don't want to make tier lists, especially when I haven't tested every single unit, right? So at this point, I have taken the time to power every single unit up. I have tested them out in a lot of PvE content. A lot of them I still use to this day, and yeah, some of them were definitely surprisingly good discoveries in some PvE content, right? And I'm gonna be rating. Now for a reference, when it comes to PvE content, here's currently what I have completed, right? So when it comes to Abyssal Towers and what's it, Abyssal Corridor, I think it's, but I just refer to it as Tower, and Abyssal Lake, I have fully cleared all of them. As you can see, 19 out of 90, 30 out of 30. This one, 30 out of 30. And when it comes to Subjugation, I currently have completed, where's the Subjugation? Here it is. I have managed to complete 49 out of the 50 levels. I really wanted to push this one, right? Like, as you can see, 4 of them are at 10 out of 10. This one is very RNG, so I just didn't have... I tried a lot, right? The boss always gets to like 10% and then wipes me out, so I'm gonna be skipping it for this. Hopefully next season I should be able to clear it, since we are getting a unit that will be a complete counter to it. But yeah, I'd like to say that I have decent experience when it comes to PvE content, and yeah, let's jump into the tier list itself, right? Okay, and the first unit we're gonna start with is the MC, right? For me, as you can see, it's the female version. You can switch between these in the settings. And yeah, unfortunately, the MC in this game isn't that amazing, right? It's sort of has very, very limited use. The problem with MC is also because it is a nat 5, right? You do have to get basically these general skill ups for her, and you are not able to summon the MC from any banners. You're not able to summon it from standard pulls, right? So the only way to skill up is essentially buying premium summons or premium skill ups, which first of all is a massive downgrade compared to every other character. So not only will you be having a lot of trouble skilling her up, you'll also not find that much use for her. Overall, she does work relatively well when it comes to CCing enemies. She has freeze on her abilities. She has some defense ignoring based on that freeze, as well as some attack bar absorption. But for a nat 5 unit, overall, she really doesn't excel in any particular content, right? She's just there. I mean, in the beginning, you'll find decent use for her. But overall, honestly, I don't see much use for it, right? I don't see much use for it. You can maybe like play around with some freeze teams, cycling her a lot, because the problem with her is she can freeze, but she also needs to follow up on that freeze really fast. So you either need another attack bar booster, or you need her to move super fast so she can actually make use of those combos. Which, I mean, in PvP settings, that's another different topic, but in PvE, pretty much no bosses require that in a way, right? So yeah, unfortunately, MC, I mean, I'm not gonna put her in D tier because she definitely does have use, but overall, for any meta sort of teams in PvE, you definitely won't see much use for her. Okay, and next up we have our light attacker, XEON. So this guy is, I would say, probably one of the hardest hitting AoE units in the game, right? He's amazing in PvP, but we are mostly talking about PvE in this one. And overall, I mean, if you do have him, he will be the best choice for a lot of like miscellaneous PvEs, such as like hunting the random monsters in the world, right? In a lot of cases, if you fully buff him up, he will just be able to one-shot him with a decent DPS set, right? If you do manage to skill up his ultimate and his passive, his damage is gonna jump insanely high, right? For skill 1, skill 2, it's really not that important to skill up, because with him, he's a squishy unit. Usually in a game, you are trying to either wipe out as much as possible with just the skill 3 alone, and if you're not able to wipe at least like half of the HP from the enemy team with him, he will usually be not the unit that you want to use in that content, right? He's very much of a one-shot type of unit. He does have a tiny bit of sustain with the shield that he gets, but overall, he's a very, very solid pick. I do use him in a lot of Abyss Corridor stages. I do use him in my main Abyss Lake team. However, you do have to bring a lot of safety around him, because if he dies, pretty much all of your DPS is gone. But yeah, overall, very, very solid unit. I know he's more PvP focused. However, even in PvE, he's able to do massive damage, and for content that does require damage, especially AoE damage, if you're fighting 2, 3 or more enemies, he is gonna be by far the best pick that you have, so I'm gonna give him a confident A tier. Okay, next up we have our dark support, FERRANSI, right? So she is one of the older units. She was definitely super meta back when the game released. Since then, unfortunately for her, we did get a lot of units that do like to boost attack bars in some way or another, or basically manipulate mana consumption, such as units like Diana, right? Units as, I believe, yeah, there's STEIN, which is a nat 4, but still a very competitive rival to a lot of attack bar, a lot of mana cycling abilities, right? So yeah, overall, she is still pretty useful. She's definitely not as meta, but we're not really comparing a unit to another in PvE, because, hey, as long as the unit is good, he's worth using, right? So yeah, for FERRANSI, she works in majority of the content. I mean, her ultimate is very self-explanatory. You consume 3 mana to get more mana back. It's on a very, very high cooldown, unfortunately, so it does mean that to make maximum use of her, you do want the battle to earn in a few turns. Otherwise, once she uses her ultimate, once she uses that skill 2 1 or 2 times to boost up your speed, she loses a lot of her capabilities after that, right? Because again, like, you don't need to boost speed every single turn, right? So for example, once you boost up speed once, the next turn she essentially just has to basic attack, so she doesn't really provide much. And whether that speed buff alone is enough for you to justify using her in that team is up to you. For me, I see that there's a lot better mana cycling and attack bar cycling options out there, right? She is good for more AoE boosts, while other units are better for sometimes like single target boosts. So overall, FERRANSI, I mean, a bit outdated unit, definitely still amazing. The speed boost allows you to move a lot more with your units. The mana boost is nice. Unfortunately, the amount of use she sees compared to other options, like, look at it this way, I'm looking from like a high level PvE content experience, right? I'm not looking at like the first levels. I'm mostly looking at like what's being used and what's like super useful at the very high levels. And this probably might be the most controversial pick for me, but I just don't see her being that useful in a lot of high level content. She's amazing early on, she's amazing if you're really out of options and you only have her, but when compared to a lot of other mana cycling, attack bar cycling units, I just can't put her that. I would put her around like low A, very high B, right? So I'm gonna put her maybe like low A. We'll see what other units are there. I might shift her back to B, because yeah, sort of I wish there were like in between tiers, right? But then I don't want to make a full mess of it. So yeah, I'm gonna put her at very low A for now. Okay, and next up we have a wind tank BERNICE, right? So she is again one of the release units. She has been a very solid unit in PvP, not PvP, but in PvE overall. Her passive is really good. It essentially just lowers the damage your whole team takes, which just by itself is already like an amazing ability. She does have full invincibility on skill 3, which if you do play around with your attack bars well, you are able to sort of like make her move last and buff up the invincibility right before a big boss attack. In that case, if you are able to time it properly, she can be like insane tier, like SSS tier. But the slightest mishap in attack bar manipulation and that invincibility suddenly becomes absolutely useless, right? Like for example, if after a few turns you can see that your attack bars shift a bit too much and she for example moves first instead of moving last, yeah, her invincibility won't do much. You can buff up her immunity and shield with skill 2. That one is lasting 2 turns, so it's always great, right? Like that is a pretty solid sustainability. Immunity is super powerful against a lot of PvE content, but yeah, whether you want to use a unit just for immunity and shields, I mean, there are better units if we are looking particularly for that also do more than that, right? So overall, very solid unit, right? She can be used to counter a lot of PvE stuff, the Dragon Boss, a lot of TOA stages, or like Abyss. I still keep referring to the tower as TOA from another game, but yeah, Abyss Corridor stages. She's pretty decent unit. I wouldn't put her super high up because, again, like she's good, but there are better options that are basically units that do more in the kits, right? A unit that only does one single good thing at this moment of time with all these amazing units released is just not enough, right? So yeah, for BERNICE, I'm gonna put her at a very high B rank, right? This does not mean that she's mid in any way, right? If she is the only option you have in terms of like sustain or immunity, for example, if you don't have Chloe, if you don't have Priscilla, she is an amazing unit. But once you have these units, she quickly falls off quite a bit and doesn't have as much use in PvE as compared to these other units, right? Okay, and next up we have ARTNESS, right? So she is a fire debuffer unit. She is a unit that particularly specializes in damage overtime effect. So her second skill, her ultimate skill, both of these do AoE dotting abilities to enemies. She does a lot of dots at that, right? I believe her second skill does a total of 3 dots for 2 turns. Her ultimate does a total of 3 dots for 3 turns, right? Her first ability is able to lower the resistance on the enemy, so her whole kit is built around inflicting as much dots as possible, right? Now for the first skill, usually you won't be using it pretty much ever against a lot of PvE enemies, right? You're mostly gonna either use the ultimate, and when the ultimate is on cooldown, you're gonna want to spam her skill 2 as much as possible, right? Overall, the cool thing about her is dots are still... Dots actually were, for those who didn't know, dots were much stronger before. They used to do 5% of the max HP on the enemy. After that, they have nerfed them a bit. Now they do either 5% of the enemy's HP or damage equal to the unit's attack, whichever one is lower, right? So she did receive a bit of a nerf. However, she is still an amazing unit, especially when paired up with a good team, when paired up with a solid attack buffer such as STEIN or PLUTO, right? Because here's the deal, when she does have attack buff, the dot damage also goes up because that unit's attack is higher, which means the dot on the enemy also does more damage. And if you pair it with a good attack buffer, she is able to clear pretty much all content that isn't water, right? Like you will be able to use her everywhere, any single PvE dungeon that isn't a water dungeon, because on water dungeons essentially she will have a very difficult time landing these debuffs. But yeah, everything that isn't the water dungeon, she is absolutely amazing at, right? Dots are still one of the strongest PvE counters in the game, and when paired with certain units, she can become even better than just a daughter by itself, right? So yeah, currently I use her in pretty much every single Abyss Corridor stage, I use her in pretty much every single Subjugation stage, I use her in pretty much every single stamina boss stage that isn't a one-shot as well, so yeah. This one, easy S tier. The cool thing about her, she also doesn't require a lot of investment. Her Rememento isn't needed at all, right? She works by that by itself. So yeah, amazing unit. As long as you can dedicate 1 or 2 skill ups to skill 2 or skill 3, you will see that she is absolutely broken for a lot of high level PvE content, right? Okay, and next up we have Chloe. So she is gonna be one of, I'm gonna instantly spoil it, she is gonna be pretty much the strongest healer in the game, not only for PvP but for PvE, pretty much everything that you can think of, right? There are currently 4 healers in total in this game that do healing on some way or another, and she is by far not, I can't say that it is the strongest like raw healing, but in terms of use, she is by far the most versatile. Her ultimate is amazing, it is a cleanse, it is a big heal. Her second skill, if you just need healing, her second skill is absolutely massive. It essentially AoE heals your whole team and gives them additional regeneration on top of that. If you just need a single target heal, first skill is able to cover that. And on top of that, her passive essentially allows you to cleanse 1 debuff from your whole team every time she moves, which is like, that is an absolutely overloaded kit just with the passive itself. And if you can just get an ultimate off when your team has a lot of debuffs, you are pretty much back to the beginning, fully healed up, 0 debuffs, immunity, like essentially just resets any damage that you have taken. And yeah, whenever you are fighting a more difficult piece of content where you will need a healer, she is pretty much gonna be the only choice that you have. Even if the dungeon boss is a win boss, I still bring her over any other healer because yeah, just the passive alone and the ability to AoE heal that consistently is that amazing. And yeah, for PvE, no question, she goes straight up to S tier. And now our fire attacker ISANIA. This one might be some controversial pick as well, but honestly, she is a very RNG unit. Like, she is a very RNG unit. She does specialize in AoE damage pretty much with all of her skills. Her skill 1 is an AoE plus a defense break, I believe. Her second skill is a massive multi-hit AoE that does have the ability to get an extra turn, right? And her third skill, the ultimate, is also it's an AoE single hit damaging ability, right? And if you do kill a unit with that ability, you essentially are guaranteed an extra turn with it. So here's the deal with her, right? She is really nice into PvE content where you know that you are able to kill. For example, if you're fighting hordes of waves of enemies and all of them are low HP, for example, like the very first stages of something like Abyssal Lake, right, or stuff like that, where you know that you will be able to kill, or where you're really struggling with content and you just want to do like second skill into a lucky proc and then third skill and combo after that. Yeah, you can use it there, but for a lot of higher level PvE stuff, she really falls off, right? Because here's the deal. With her, you either have to kill, or like, you have to kill within like turn 1, turn 2, or like after proc 1, proc 2. If you do not do that, she really loses a lot of her use, right? And she's a very RNG unit, so if you're purely relying on RNG to complete a stage, you're gonna be having a pretty hard time with PvE content overall, right? Because there are a lot of better options that do damage consistently, such as the ARTNESS with her dots. So yeah, For ISANIA, I'll say this. If you're someone who feels like you are almost at the point where you can complete certain PvE content, but you're just not lucky enough, you can essentially just brute force your way through it with ISANIA, because here's the deal. She can infinitely proc, technically, right? You can use skill 2, skill 2, skill 2, skill 2, skill 2, and you might just get like 10, 20 additional turns with it, right? But that's, I'm not gonna say, like, that's not a great strategy to rely on in PvE, right? And yeah, she does do pretty good AoE damage. You can use her in content like Abyssal Corridor, Abyssal Lake, some of the dungeons such as like the Wind Harpy equipment boss, she's definitely pretty good there. But overall, she's really more AoE focused, and a lot of PvE content is usually boss type of content where she isn't that good at, right? Her second skill, her third skill aren't too great into single boss types because they don't inflict any debuffs, they don't do any additional effects or anything like that. So yeah, I'm gonna have to put her in B tier for now, right? Good for a lot of these miscellaneous stuff, but when you're conquering high level bosses, definitely not that amazing. Okay, next up we have our wind attacker Monica. So at the moment she is pretty much the main wind type damage dealing unit in the game. On May 28th we will be getting Ivy, which is a new wind 5-star attacker, so we'll see how much that shifts the meta, right? But yeah, wind element has been lacking in terms of damage up until now, and unfortunately Monica, when it comes to PvE content, isn't that great, right? So she has AoE abilities. She is unique in a way where her damage scales with attack and her HP, right? So in a way you can build her tanky and still do really good damage. However, she is mostly used in PvP, right? I'm not saying she is used a lot in PvP, but I'm saying that the majority of use for her will be in these more PvP scenarios where you're not able to consistently get buffs on you. That's why you're doing damage with your max HP, because you don't need to buff up your attack, for example, right? But yeah, overall in PvE content she really doesn't have much use. She doesn't inflict any debuffs that are important for boss stages. She doesn't provide any buffs that are important for boss stages, right? She's very sort of like self-fulfilling unit where she only heals herself, for example, stuff like that. So yeah, unfortunately in PvE she doesn't have much use. She does have good damage for a wind unit, but for a lot of content where you do need single target wind damage, Yuri is gonna be just a much better option. So yeah, it hurts me to say, but I'm gonna have to place Monica in D tier for PvE purposes. She simply just doesn't have that much use at all. Okay, and next up we have Beatrice. I would say probably my most used and probably my most favorite unit overall. Very unique playstyle. I love that about her, right? Because her passive, essentially, the more your team gets hit, the more damage she will be able to do. And on top of that, if you are able to time it perfectly, when she is low HP, she will be able to ignore a lot of defense on the enemy. And yeah, that is amazing in PvP scenarios, but it's also amazing in some PvE scenarios. Yeah, if you build her on damage with a little bit of sustain, and you do manage to make her survive a bit by the time her turn comes, right? Just launching one ultimate, trust me, can do absolutely massive damage that you are not gonna be able to even get close with any other unit. Trust me, even XEON is not able to match her damage when the setup is perfect. And yeah, overall though, she is a pretty good unit. The cool thing about her with PvE is that she is a self-buffing unit. Her first skill is able to provide her her own attack buff, which means that you can take her as a damage dealer and as an attack based damage dealer without having any additional attack buffers, and she will still be able to do massive damage, which is unfortunately not possible with a lot of other attack based damage dealers in this game. So That already puts her above pretty much every single attacker in the game in terms of PvE purposes. And yeah, her being a water type also is a really good counter to quite a bit of PvE stuff. The dragon absolutely melts from Beatrice abilities, right? And yeah, overall you will be able to use her in pretty much all content. I usually wouldn't suggest using her in win type of content, right? Because she does need to survive, and the way you make her survive is by minimizing the amount of hits the boss does. Usually you want to use something like a provoke for bosses, right? Because some bosses do AoE damage with their basic abilities, and these are perfect to get her low enough where she can do massive damage, but not take a little damage where she would die, right? You can also pair her up with LILLIA, who will essentially prevent death at 1 HP, and if you combo those together, get Beatrice to 1 HP, she's absolutely gonna one-shot everything, right? And yeah, it does take a bit of setup, but for a lot of content such as like the Abyssal Lake, Abyssal Corridors, you are able to afford the setup, because the damage she puts out is amazing. So yeah, I'm gonna put her pretty much similar to XEON, right? I'm not putting her like low A, high tier. I'm not swapping those here. I'm just putting it just straight up in A tier, right? She's not S tier material. She doesn't have as much use as some of the units in here, but overall a very solid PvE attacker. Okay, next up we have CHESHA, right? So for her, here's the deal. She's a dark type attacker. Dark types are of course much rarer than a lot of RGB units. Unfortunately, she is a very single target based damage dealer, right? She's able to remove buffs, she's able to silence enemies, she does very good damage with her single target abilities. The problem with her is the debuffs, for example, she does, such as like silence, isn't that OP on units like bosses, right? Bosses are still able to completely wipe you even if they use their basic attacks, right? So I don't see much use there. In content where you're fighting 2 or more enemies, single target damage falls off really fast, and at that point you're better off with going AoE abilities, dotting abilities, all of that, such as like XEON, such as like ARTNESS, right? So yeah, for content where you do need single target damage, she does good damage. Unfortunately, it pretty much stops at that, right? As much as I tried using her in a lot of boss content, I just unfortunately couldn't find much use when compared to a lot of other single target damage dealers. For example, like I believe her name is SACHA? I'll get to it, right? I forgot the names in Korean here. But yeah, units like her, units like YURI, both have amazing single target damage, and unfortunately, yeah, I don't see much use for CHESHA. I know a lot of people in the Korean server use her for a lot of PvE content, but personally, I've completed a lot of content, especially like high level single target content where I try to use her. The damage never amazed me, even though I used the same damage set for all of my damage dealers. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to place her probably in the B tier. I'm gonna put her in B just because she does have the buff strip, which can come in clutch in some situations, but yeah, just from the damage alone, I unfortunately cannot put her any higher than that, especially at the category of XEON or Beatrice. Okay, next up we have Diana. So this is a wind type support, and yeah, let's not beat around the bush. By far the biggest track. Okay, hey, off topic. But yeah, she is amazing, right? She is simply amazing. She is mostly used in PvP, but she is also insanely strong in PvE. She is eventually, when it comes to mana cycling, right, she is very similar to the strength of FERRANSI. The thing is, she does have more than mana cycling, which makes her a very good PvE unit on top of that. So her ultimate essentially lowers the cost of your whole team's next ability by 1 mana, so that alone already saves you 4 mana because it applies to your whole team, including herself, right? So her next turn after the ultimate will also be discounted by 1 mana. that alone essentially saves you 4 mana in a way, right? Whereas FERRANSI's maxed ultimate is on a much higher cooldown and is also only giving you 3 mana in total. So yeah, in the long run, Diana will be able to cycle mana a bit better than FERRANSI. On top of that, her ultimate also boosts damage of your whole team for 3 turns, right? Which is absolutely massive. Even if you don't have an attack buffer, for example, that can boost the attack-based units damage by a lot. It also boosts damage for like HP units, which is amazing in itself, which is something that attack buff cannot do. So yeah, just the ultimate alone is amazing. Her basic attack, her first skill, honestly, it can grant a slow on the enemy, but as much as I use that, it usually doesn't land. It usually isn't that important. However, if you do land it, you will buy yourself some time with your other units. But her second skill is amazing as well, especially in PvE. It's not as good when not maxed out, because the difference between the attack bar she gains when leveled up and when not leveled up is pretty big. 45% when not leveled up and 75% when leveled up. And on top of that, it also reduces the ultimate cooldown of that selected unit by 2 turns. So in a lot of PvE scenarios, you are able to cycle some of your ultimates a lot, right? And a little pro tip, I actually use her second skill to cycle not other units, but her own ultimate, right? Because that ultimately saves you more mana, and on top of that, you are able to keep up the damage up effects pretty much permanently, right? So yeah, insane mana cycling, insane damage boost, insane utility with the second skill, going straight to S tier. And next up, we have our fire tank RAVI. So this one is also a very solid unit in PvE. Now, I do want to say with RAVI is she does require quite a bit of investment, right? All of her skills, right? All of the upgradable skills are amazing. Her first skill is amazing. Second skill is amazing. Ultimate, really good. Passive, absolutely brilliant, right? But that also means that you will require a lot of dupes to make her amazing in every single aspect, right? So yeah, overall, when unskilled, I would say she's mostly there for the passive and the ultimate. However, if you do manage to pull a skill up for her, I would highly suggest putting it into skill 1, because first of all, the defense break chance will shoot up by a lot, and on top of that, she does able to do damage with her first skill based on her HP. And trust me, once you allow a few turns to take place and she is able to chain first skill into first skill into first skill, trust me, her damage is actually pretty big, right? And it can be overall, like, it won't be XEON types of damage where he can just absolutely nuke something, but keep in mind that the first skill only costs 1 mana, and essentially every time her turn comes up, you will be able to use the first skill because she gets 1 mana every time a unit moves, right? So yeah, she's really good with her ultimate. She really adds a lot of sustain with her passive because she essentially just takes damage from your other units and applies it to herself. And the damage and the defense break, just trust me, cannot be underestimated. I usually use her more for the first skill than the tankiness, right? The tankiness in itself is just an added bonus. So yeah, overall, definitely don't use her in all of the content, right? But in the content where she works, she is pretty much my primary pick, right? So easily gonna put her into the A tier category. Okay, next up we have PRISCILLA. This is a water type support, and yeah, I'm not gonna talk too much about her. Her skills are very self-explanatory. She's essentially just a massive attack bar boosting plus sustain sort of support, right? So unfortunately she doesn't have any healing, but she does provide a lot of shields. She provides guard support, immunity, all of amazing buffs for your whole team. On top of that, her first skill is also able to do a chance to miss on the enemies, which can lower the damage quite a bit. However, unless you skill up that skill, it usually will miss, right, which is unfortunate, and you also need a lot of accuracy for that to be very effective. But yeah, overall, for content where you do need a lot of buffs, she is really there. The problem is that the lack of healing really puts her lower than units such as like Chloe, right? Because if you're looking purely at sustain, especially long-term fights, all of these buffs, all of these shields are amazing, right? But if you take some damage, if you're not able to heal that up, you will eventually die, which is not the case with Chloe, right? In a lot of cases, I will take a raw healer over all of the massive buffs and shields that Priscilla can do, because with a healer, you know that any damage that you take can be healed up, whereas if you don't bring a healer and you only take her for sustain, any damage that you receive will essentially be permanent. So yeah, overall, in terms of support, in terms of pure sustain, Chloe is a little bit better, but Priscilla is definitely still a very, very good unit. She does cost quite a bit of mana with all of her abilities, right? Especially if you want to cycle third skill, second skill, third skill. But yeah, for a content where you really want to sustain damage, if you can pair her with Chloe, she will be a really, really good support. So I'm gonna put her in A tier. I do use her quite a bit in some more challenging PvE content, right? So yeah, definitely deserves her spot there. Okay, next up we have our light debuffer, one of the newer units, Libertas, right? So for her, straight up gonna say she is mostly a PvP unit. She is 90% a PvP unit, but you can use her in some PvE scenarios as well. The damage she does is actually pretty good for a debuffer unit, right? She's not even an attack type unit, and she is able to dish out very, very solid DPS. She does have quite a few useful debuffs for PvE, right? So her ultimate is able to reduce attack bar on the enemy. On paper, this looks good, but usually this is not gonna be the reason why you use her in PvE, right? It is absolutely the reason why you use her in PvP, but not in PvE as much. Her second skill is able to defense break, and her first skill is able to strip buffs, and these are the skills that you will be using her a bit more when it comes to PvE. Overall though, here's the deal. She is an AoE unit, right? All of her skills are AoE, which means that when it comes to single target bosses, there are a lot of better units that do better debuffs, better damage, all of that, right? If you're dealing with 2 or more units in a PvE stage, she is really, really good, right? And if you are able to dedicate enough mana for her abilities, because usually you will be spamming the skill 2 ability consistently, right? Sometimes skill 3 as well. She is a very solid unit. You can use her as a damage dealer if you see that you're not able to afford putting a damage dealer by itself, but you do still want to have a little bit of DPS along with all of the debuffs you have. So yeah, she's pretty good there, but she really falls up in bots type stages, because yeah, AoE damage naturally is gonna be lower multiplier than a lot of single target damage, and yeah, the debuff she provides just for a single target is usually not enough. Again, first skill, strip is amazing, right? But a lot of PvE content does not have buffs to strip, right? Second skill, defense break is amazing, but in a lot of cases where you're doing PvE, you will have another sort of defense breaker in there. For example, Pluto, very popular unit. Usually you will use her in a lot of PvE content, and she does have a defense break built in her. So how much are you gonna need another defense breaker? Really not that much, right? RAVI, again, another super popular defense breaker. Her defense break is on a 1/3 cooldown. Damage is pretty comparable to Libertas skill 2, so really very good unit, very good debuffs, right? But unfortunately, the conditions of the boss units simply don't allow her to shine as much as she could, right? And I'm gonna put her in B tier. Unfortunately, I myself don't use her much. I tried using her in a lot of PvE content, but yeah, she just, for me, she fell off compared to units like RAVI, and in terms of damage, she definitely fell off compared to units like BEATRICE, XEON, ARTNESS, all of that, right? So yeah, pretty neutral, pretty decent B tier for now. And the last PvE Nat 5 that we have will be the newest units released so far, and that is ENAS, right? So she is a healer type, however, she does mostly specialize in sort of like offensive buffing your team, right? So her ultimate is able to give you attack buff and life leech for your whole team. Her second skill is gonna be able to do a little bit of healing and cleansing, which is very similar to Chloe, but I'll talk about that in just a second. And her first skill is able to do some damage. On top of that, she also has a passive where any unit on your team that hits the enemy will also deal a tiny bit of damage based on ENA's attack, right? Spoiler alert, that passive isn't really that great, right? You can do like 10,000 hit with the unit, and then she will do like 500 extra damage. Honestly, as much as I tried to build her as like a full DPS, not that good. Like the passive damage really not that good. First skill damage, nothing too crazy either, right? Because if you build her full DPS, in the end she is a healer. If she dies first, then what's the point of the healer, right? You want your healer to be at least somewhat tanky, so she can take a hit and sustain if really needed. So yeah, overall first skill, second skill, passive not that amazing. Not second skill, but the first skill and the passive are not that amazing. Second skill is pretty comparable to Chloe's ultimate, right? It is an AoE cleanse and a heal based on her attack. Overall, the healing is much weaker than Chloe's from our tribe, but she does have a Rememento that is very focused on her, so if you are able to get her Rememento, her healing might eventually outshine Chloe's, but overall, if I had to use purely a healer, right, I would still use Chloe over her. She does have an attack buff in her ultimate as well. Unfortunately, that is only a 2-turn attack buff, right? And a 2-turn attack buff really falls flat when you have a lot of better units. STEIN is a 4-star unit. She is able to give a 3-turn attack buff and a 3-turn defense buff on top of that, which is much better, right? Pluto has 3-turn attack buff and 3-turn critical rate buff, plus a damage buff, plus a defense break, which is again a much better offensive type of support, right? So yeah, she falls off to a lot of 4-star units in her category, and since 4-star units are much easier to skill up as well, once those get skill ups, trust me, you won't find that much use for ENAS. So yeah, in some clutch scenarios where you are not able to afford 2 spots for a dedicated healer and a dedicated attack buffer, and are basically must use 1 unit for both, she will work there. But overall, I just haven't found much use from what I've used so far, so I'm gonna put her in B tier. Okay, so I'm recording this specific part about 1 unit, right? And the reason I'm doing this is essentially the first time I recorded this, I put this into C tier, right? This particular unit. And I have decided that I do want to change this part out a bit, because again, like, I've recorded the video, I've reviewed all of the footage, right? And then I played the game a tiny bit more just to cement my opinion on all of the units, right? So I've tested them all a bit again. And yes, while I'll agree with the tier list I've done for all of the units, I do want to change this one particular unit, because I did realize that she is a little bit better than I talked about at first, so I'm gonna cut that part out with her, and I'm gonna re-record this particular segment for 1 unit. So yeah, and I'm particularly talking about SERIE, the wind healer that is a 4-star, right? And yeah, after testing her out a bit more, I have decided that instead of just leaving like this sort of like misinformation segment, I do want to put her in the correct rank, in my opinion, based on my like updated opinion at least. And yeah, she definitely deserves a little bit more than the C tier I put her at. I still want to say that her and Chloe are very similar units, right? They both have cleanse, they both have heals, they're both sort of like units that fully specialize in recovering your team from debuffs and topping up their HP, right? But here's the deal, SERIE is a bit more heal focused, and I definitely underestimated her heal at first. But yeah, she is a bit more like fully healing focused. She does a lot of heals with her skills. She does a lot of heals with her passive, right? She has healing increasing buffs. Again, it's a question of how long those will last. But she is definitely a unit that is more focused specifically on healing only, right? Like, if you need the maximum amount of heals possible, SERIE is probably one of the best options out there, right? Whereas Chloe is a bit more focused on removing debuffs from your team, right? Because yes, both of them can cleanse, both of them can heal. SERIE is more about this passive healing, more about increasing the healing about. Chloe does have amazing heals, she does have recovery over time as well. However, for SERIE, she is only able to cleanse one debuff on her ultimate, which is on a cooldown, whereas Chloe is able to cleanse one debuff every turn she moves because of her passive, and she's able to cleanse all debuffs with her ultimate, right? So when it comes to cleansing, Chloe is by far superior. When it comes to healing, Chloe and SERIE really are able to compete against each other, and in some cases I feel like in terms of like raw healing power, if we account for all of the buffs, SERIE is definitely able to pull through close to the amount of healing that Chloe has, right? Especially this more passive healing where you are able to get heals just from her passive. You don't have to use mana to heal, right? And if a mana is a very big option, SERIE might be a better option than Chloe for you, right? The thing is, with a lot of PvE content, cleansing is usually gonna be a little bit more important than the pure healing power that you are able to provide, right? Because a lot of bosses have very nasty debuffs. They have some stunts like CC effects that you have to cleanse, otherwise you're losing pretty much a full turn with your whole team. And whether you do like 40% of max HP healing compared to like 50% really won't matter if you're losing that much when it comes to turns, right? So the reason Chloe is still higher than SERIE is that the cleansing is simply just more important in this game than the pure raw healing power. But SERIE is an amazing healer if all you need is literally just pure raw healing power, right? So yeah, previously I put her in C tier. I have decided to change this. This is the only unit I'm changing for this video, right? And yes, I'm gonna be moving her to low A / like high B tier, right? And the reason I'm doing this is I don't want to put her in S tier because, again, as I said, raw healing power is not as much needed as cleansing, as all of the buffs and all of that stuff, right? Raw healing power, if you are at a point where you need so much healing that you have to heal like 50-70% of HP every time the boss moves, that already means that you're doing something wrong with the boss battle, most likely, right? You're either not provoking, you're either not having enough buffs on yourself. Because with healing, if you want to beat PvE properly, you need to absorb majority of the damage either with CC effects or with buffs, right? And healing should be only there for you to top up the small amount of damage that you take. If you're taking massive amounts, pretty much like full HP of your HP bar as damage from bosses, no amount of healing is gonna save you, right? So yeah, I'm gonna put her around like very low A / very high B tier. And yeah, the rest of the video you will see that she is in C tier, but for the final tier list I will showcase her in A tier because that is the updated ranking that I have put on the list. Okay, and yeah, let's resume the rest of the video as before. And next up we have Jeremiah, which honestly I have to say probably one of the most underrated units that I've seen, right? So here's the deal. She is another fire daughter. She's an attacker type this type, but essentially her first skill is a single target dot. Her second skill is an AoE dot multi-hit. Here's the deal though. For PvE, this is really where she shines, right? Because the second skill is a multi-hit, however it hits random targets. Not like a full AoE, it hits a certain amount of times, but it chooses a random target. However, if there's only one target in the field, all of the hits will go to that target, and every single hit on her second skill does have a chance to dot. So when skilled up, especially if you are fighting a boss, like a single boss with no additional minions next to him, right? Her dots are actually very comparable to ARTNESS dots. On top of that, she has an amazing third skill, and I believe this is the only skill that has this effect in the game. And she is able to explode every single damage over time effect on the enemies, right? Which means that when paired up with ARTNESS, not only are you able to do massive damage to bosses with insane dot stacking, on top of that you can also detonate them super fast in order to save up on a lot of turns, especially for content where turns are important, so such as the Abyssal Corridor, where you have to beat the stage within a certain amount of turns. Trust me, I use ARTNESS and Jeremiah combo in every single stage of Abyssal Corridor, because if you do not use them there, you will simply not have enough turns to beat a lot of the content, right? Like the dots alone from ARTNESS are not going to be enough. You really are going to have to look into a whole different team if you don't use Jeremiah. So yeah, she's able to speed up a lot of these super difficult dungeons a lot, and the dots alone from her are also very, very comparable to ARTNESS dots, so I'm gonna put her in a very confident A tier for now. Okay, and next up we have our light tank, Jeremiah, THEODORE. There we go. THEODORE, again, one of probably the most underrated units, but not because of his abilities, right? Because of one very simple mechanic, that is the provoke, right? The provoke debuff, in my opinion, from the people I've seen playing this game, and especially like the videos that I've seen playing this game, people usually don't realize how OP provoke is. Like, it is absolutely busted. Provoke works on pretty much every boss unit, right? And a lot of boss units, like their regular skills, have insane debuffs, they have insane damage. One provoke will lower the damage from a boss by like 80%. They will usually only hit a single target, and they will usually not cause any debuffs at all. And if you are ready to take that hit, if you have a defense buff, if you have shields, if you have heals, you are able to completely shut down a boss. And THEODORE is by far the best at doing that. So he does have some shields on his second skill, which honestly you won't really use much. He has an AoE provoke on his ultimate. Pretty good PvP ability. Again, you're really not gonna be using ultimate much at all. He is there for his first skill only. First skill is a single target provoke, and I use him in every single boss fight in the game. Abyssal Corridors, Abyssal Lake, Subjugation, every single subjugation, all 5 elements. If he provokes, you are confident that the boss will not do pretty much any damage at all, right? Like, it's that simple. He's that OP. He's not the only unit with provoke. RAVI also has a provoke on her second skill. However, unless you skill that up, the chance to land the provoke is pretty low. For THEODORE, you're gonna have a much easier time skilling him up. His damage also scales with defense, if I remember correctly. So if you do end up stacking good defense with him, he can do a little bit of a decent chip damage as well. So yeah, provoke absolutely busted debuff in PvE content, and easily goes into A tier. Honestly, I'm very close at putting him at S tier, but just because his other abilities aren't that amazing, I'm gonna keep him in A tier. Okay, next up we have LILLIA, and this is again one of the only units with a very unique ability, and that is a revive, right? So I believe she is the only reviver in the game at the moment. And yeah, while the revive itself, in terms of PvE content, isn't like a super OP thing, because if you get to the point where you need a revive, right, you're already most likely failing that content, because usually you should be able to either out sustain or out debuff the boss, out damage the boss, right? So if you get to the point where you need to rely on a revive, you probably already failed. But if you see that you need a revive and the boss is at like 5% HP left, she can come in clutch in some of those teams. On top of that, her second skill is really amazing. She's able to heal up everyone and give them prevention of death for 1 turn, which means that similar to BERNICE, right, if you are able to target her second skill to move last right before the boss, right, the boss can do whatever ability he wants, your units will not be dying, right? Because even if your unit has 1000 HP and the boss does like 20,000 damage hit, as long as her second skill buff is on your ally, that ally will drop to 1 HP, but he will not die, right? And after that, you are able to heal up, you are able to just buy an extra turn with that. Plus, her ultimate ability, in case they do die, she will do an AoE revive on all of your allies. If you do have her Rememento, it will auto revive 1 unit as well as soon as it dies. So, yeah, insane revive abilities, insane damage death prevention abilities. The only downside is, along with using mana for her skill, she also uses her own HP, so you need to make sure not to overdo it, otherwise she will drop to like 1 HP and die herself, right? But yeah, she can come in clutch in quite a few scenarios, and I'm gonna put her at a very neutral B tier for now. Also, by the way, just as a healer alone, with her second skill, she is also really good and definitely comparable to the healing levels of something like Chloe. Okay, and next up, Yuri. Very simple unit, single target wind damage. That's the only thing you're gonna be using her for, right? She only does damage, she really doesn't do much else. She can break guards quite easily on water boss units because she is able to cycle her abilities a lot, right? Her ultimate pretty much guarantees a second turn, which you can use into a second skill, and yeah, you will be able to break guards of water enemies quite often in the beginning of the fight, right? But later on, she will have quite a bit of trouble surviving. She has a lot of trouble keeping up buffs because of all the additional turns that she gets. She gets turns, she self-buffs speed, which means that she will be able to move more than any other unit on your team, and if she loses those defensive buffs such as defense buff, shield buff, healing, immunities, death prevention, all of that, she will be very susceptible to that. So if you do need a good PvE damage dealer, especially for water bosses, she's pretty much gonna be your main pick. But apart from that, I feel like she doesn't have much use apart from that. Plus, in a few days when the game releases, there will be a new wind attacker Ivy, and based on the skill preview of that unit, it seems like she will completely outshadow Yuri with her kids. So yeah, for now I'm gonna be putting her in B tier, but as soon as the Ivy comes out, she probably jump lower to the C tier. And next up, honestly I still don't know what her exact name is, because even their official page has like different names from the in-game page. Some say it's Stein, some say it's Schutein, no one knows, right? I'm gonna call her Stein because it's a bit easier. But yeah, this is the most, like, straight up, I'm gonna say it as it is, the most underrated unit in the game, like compared to every single unit in here, right? By far the most underrated unit in the game. Here's the deal. First skill is able to apply a chance to miss. That by itself, if you do manage to get good accuracy on her and you do manage to land the debuff, that will completely kill the damage that the enemy does. But that's not even the main use you use her for. Her second skill and her ultimate is what is the most important. Second skill, boost up the attack bar of any other unit on your team and makes their skill 1 mana lower, right? Which means that essentially, not only are you using 2 mana to save 1 mana, you're also cycling that unit faster, which means you gain more mana with them, right? You're able to push any unit to move right after her, which in a lot of scenarios is very important, especially for units like damage dealers, if you really need to get like a quick nuke into before the boss moves, right? Her ultimate absolutely busted. A 3-turn attack buff, 3-turn defense buff on your whole team. Not only is it like an amazing buff for damage, it's also an insane sustain ability, because that defense buff allows especially your damage dealers to take much more damage. We're not even done there. Passive literally allows you to cycle mana for free. If I remember correctly, she gets 4 mana every 3 turns. As a little pro tip, you can cycle herself. And if you cycle herself, you are gonna be literally generating mana like you've never seen before. You're gonna be generating more mana than FERRANSI, more mana than Diana. She's gonna be absolutely, trust me, like, if you don't use her in PvE, I'm gonna say it like it is, you're actually trolling, right? She is broken. She is straight up broken. She is in S tier. I would create a separate SS tier just for her if I wanted to, but I'm not gonna bother with that for now. But yeah, you have to use her. Literally, there's no other way to say it. You have to use her, otherwise your PvE teams are gonna be absolutely much weaker than what you can build without her, right? On top of that, do keep in mind that there are some Remementos that allow you to cycle mana on support type units. If you manage to get one of those, and I think you can buy them from the premium pass shop, right, if I remember correctly, unless they change something like that. There's one Rememento that allows you to just get a free mana whenever you move with a certain chance. Yeah, you can imagine how much mana she can generate by just moving a lot, like for free essentially, because look at it this way: 2 mana for her second skill, she will buff herself. That means her next turn is 1 mana lower. That means her next second skill on herself will only cost 1 mana, because whenever a unit moves, it also gains 1 mana, which means that once you use the second skill once, every second follow-up second skill will be free, because 1 mana lower plus you gain 1 mana. So essentially every time one other unit moves, by that time you have generated like 5 mana just from Stein, right? Yeah, absolutely broken units. You must build her. If you don't, I'm not friends with you. That's simple as that. Okay, next up we have him. And I did have to look up his name because, yeah, I'm not too familiar with the names of a lot of these 4-star units. Roussin, no one knows how to pronounce his name. But yeah, here's the deal. He, again, he was a very meta unit for PvP a few patches ago. At the moment, he's not that meta in PvP. Unfortunately, he's not that meta in PvE either. So his main use is essentially stripping debuffs with his ultimate, as well as blocking debuffs or blocking debuffs that the enemies can receive, right? So essentially with his ultimate, you can strip all buffs as well as add 1 turn of inability to receive any buffs. The problem with that is when it comes to PvE content, first of all, a lot of bosses don't even have any buffs. Second of all, if the bosses don't have any buffs, first of all, the stripping is useless. Second of all, the buff block is also kind of useless, right? And for his other skills, he is able to apply a chance to miss. He's able to apply a chance to increase damage taken. So those are relatively decent debuffs for a lot of boss content, right? Because it just straight up lowers the damage of enemies. It just straight up increases damage they take. But those are also debuffs that you will be able to apply with a lot of the regular units that you use. So for example, a chance to miss, you can always just use time for it. A chance to increase damage, I believe, is it ISANIA who does it? Because here's the deal, whether you're using damage increase or you're using defense break, they're essentially the same thing, right? They will usually just boost the damage that your team does, because both of those effects directly increase the damage you do, right? So a lot of units like ISANIA, RAVI, all of that, right, will do very similar effects, so you don't need to stack that much. And apart from that, if the boss does not have any buffs that he relies on, right, he's not that great. But if you do see that a boss does have debuffs, or buffs rather, and you do need to counter those quite a bit, you can find a little bit of use for him. But overall, I would put him in the C tier category. Definitely one of the units that are so niche that you might use like once or twice per month total. Okay, and next, this might be actually the shortest review ever. Next up, we have a fire attacker Lucas. Defense break, increased guard damage, that's it. Everything that you can do with other units, but just 10 times worse, right? Like literally, he has no use. Simply, he has absolutely no use. His damage is pathetic. The debuffs he provides, a lot of other units already have much better versions. Again, like defense break, there's RAVI there. Increased guard damage, you have units like Her, for example, units like Her who can just do straight up a higher guard damage. Really no use, trust me. Like you don't usually rely on guard damage in order to deal with a lot of bosses, right? If you want to lower the damage of the boss, you're more likely to use a provoke to direct the damage to a single unit rather than try to break their guard, right? So yeah, honestly, Lucas, trust me, you won't use him probably ever, right? Okay, and next up we have Pluto. So this again is one of probably the best 4-star units in the game. She was absolutely meta since the launch, and she is still absolutely meta since as of a few days ago, right? She is a purely offensive support. All 3 of her skills directly increase damage for your team, right? So her first skill, damage buff, AoE, lasting 3 turns, absolutely amazing, right? Second skill, AoE, defense break, again directly increasing the damage you do. And third skill, AoE, attack buff, AoE critical buff, again directly increasing the attack damage you do. So yeah, really not much to say, right? She is an amazing offensive support. The amount of buffs and debuffs packed into one unit just makes her like the perfect PvE unit to use, right? And essentially, she is the best support, the best offensive support for all situations where you are not able to use STEIN, right? For example, if the boss is like a wind element, for example, and you see your STEIN is dying a lot, she is gonna be an amazing replacement for that. If you need to use 2 teams, for example, in the tower, as known as Abyss Corridor, if you see that one team uses STEIN, you can place Pluto in another team and have both teams do absolutely massive damage. So yeah, very self-explanatory. Amazing support, really. Like, you're gonna be using her every day pretty much. One of the 2 main damage buffers, and yeah, amazing unit, definitely deserving of the S tier rank, right? Okay, and next up we have our water defense unit, Rampart. This guy is also very solid in a lot of PvE content, especially non-win PvE content, right? What he does is he is a very similar version to, I would say, to Bernice or maybe Priscilla, right? Just with a little bit of different skills. So with his first skill, he is able to do an AoE CC ability. Usually you won't be using that ability, right? You want it more for the sustain rather than the CC, right? So yeah, the ability is there, right? But you're not going to be using the freeze as much. Where you really want to use him with is his second, his ultimate, as well as his insanely strong passive, right? So the second skill is able to provide a lot of shields for you, as well as increased guard damage, which means that if you're fighting an element disadvantage boss, right, he is able to essentially counter that quite well, right? So if you see that majority of your team is fire and you're beating a water boss for whatever reason, right? I don't see a scenario where that happens, but if it happens, it happens, right? You can just use him to prevent a lot of guard damage. If, for example, you don't have Priscilla, he's a very good option in the placement for that. On top of his ultimate, it also boosts up his defense and everyone's defense, of course, for 3 turns. So on top of that, if your STEIN is being used somewhere else, he is a very good option. And his passive, honestly, his passive is the main reason you use him for. And yeah, his passive essentially gives AoE shield to your whole team every time he moves. He doesn't even need to use a skill, which is why he is that amazing, right? If you just need a little bit of sustain with that shield, he is able to just consistently stack it. If you build absolutely massive defense on him, if you give him his own Rememento, where he's able to scale defense, he will be the perfect sustain unit when you're receiving a lot of the chip damage. And in a lot of cases, if you use him, you may not even need a separate healer for your team, right? So overall, very good PvE unit. Definitely not gonna use him everywhere, right? Because a lot of PvE content, you do take a lot of damage, but for the content where you take a little bit of damage, you just need a little bit of extra sustain. Maybe your other defense buffers are not available, maybe you don't have BERNICE. He's a very good option. I'm gonna put him in B tier. Definitely very solid unit that I do recommend. Okay, and next up we have our wind debuffer HAJIN. This guy unfortunately doesn't have much use in PvE. He is a very PvP focused unit. I'm not gonna say that he is good in PvP, right? Like, he is super niche, right? And can only be used with a specific team built around him, where you're essentially trying to increase the mana cost of the enemies, increase their cooldowns by a lot. Unfortunately, in PvE, all of that doesn't really apply, right? Because bosses, even without their ultimate third skill abilities, are still able to completely wipe you. They have pretty much infinite mana, so reducing it by 1 increases the consumption by 1 really doesn't do much. They have so many passives that just grant the mana that they will essentially have 10 mana pretty much every turn, right? Especially the more endgame bosses. So yeah, unfortunately, HAJIN does not have any use in PvE. His damage is not good even for a wind unit. Yuri is more likely to outdamage him in terms of DPS. Yeah, the attack bar but like the attack bar reduce he does is super small, and it has a very low chance. Gonna be absolutely outshadowed by Ivy once she comes out. So yeah, D tier, unfortunately no use from him. And next up we have a water attacker SACHA, and this one, this is currently the highest single target damage unit in the game. Remember when I talked in terms of single damage potential by SACHA, right? She is a single target damage dealer that has decent debuffs alongside it, right? She does not have debuffs. She has more damage though, right? Her ultimate damage, we're gonna forget first skill. Honestly, first skill really doesn't matter. It does grant stealth, which is an interesting ability, but in a lot of cases that won't be that important, right? You mostly want her for the second, third skill and the passive, right? So we're gonna skip our first skill for now. Really not a great. Second skill, double guard damage, which is amazing when you're going into a lot of fire bosses, because if you look at the water units available, apart from Beatrice, right, there aren't any units that can deal well with fire guard damage, right? She's a support, he's essentially like a support, and you won't use an MC, right? So this means that Beatrice is pretty much the only unit that is able to consistently do big guard damage to fire damage units. And SACHA, essentially with her second skill, is able to do absolutely, I believe if I'm not wrong, she does 6 guard damage with her second skill, so you're able to easily break a lot of fire bosses if that is needed. On top of that, ultimate damage, 255% scaling. I don't remember whether that is like skilled or unskilled. I think it was skilled, but 255% scaling plus more damage if there is only one enemy in the field, plus more damage from her passive, right? And yeah, trust me, if you have an attack buff, if you have a defense buff, I do use her sometimes in the Dragon equipment stage, right? I forgot what the boss name exactly is, but you'll definitely realize once you start playing. Yeah, she does absolutely massive damage, right? For the Dragon boss, I think I hit her like the best damage dealer set I had, the best Rememento I had, and I think she did around like 40% of his HP bar, right? With her ultimate when fully buffed up, when a defense break has been applied. So yeah, absolutely massive single target damage. Usually you only want to use it into fire target bosses. For a lot of other bosses, you're gonna be looking into other damage dealers, because she really shines from doing that guard damage and completely like disabling a lot of fire based enemies, right? But yeah, absolutely amazing single target damage if all you need is damage, right? Unfortunately, she doesn't do much after that. So yeah, good at what she does. Not too much use, but good at what she does. So I'm gonna put her at a B tier. And lastly, we have the newest 4-star unit, that is KANA, right? So this one overall isn't that bad of a unit, right? If you really need to play around breaking guards, right? She is a really good unit for that. So of course, when it comes to breaking guards, you're usually gonna want to use her into a wind type of enemy, right? But her skill 1 and her skill 2 both play around increasing guard damage, right? So one of her skills essentially just does double guard damage, and her another skill gives a debuff that increases guard damage of the rest of your units, right? So when it comes to countering wind units, usually she will be a very decent option, right? Her ultimate also has very useful debuffs. So she has a debuff that will increase the damage on the enemies, as well as land a, or not increase the damage, but decrease the damage they do, right? Essentially like a attack break or something like that. And it will give a chance to debuff. I can't even talk after such a long video. It gives a chance to miss a hit, right? Basically like a glancing hit. Both of those debuffs combined are a very strong combo for disabling a unit's damage, right? So yeah, when it comes to fighting wind units, she's definitely pretty good. If you really need those debuffs, she is an option as well. However, overall, apart from fighting wind units, you usually won't see that much use for her, right? From what I've played around, again, like, the ultimate is really nice, right? Like, the ultimate is really nice. The debuffs from the ultimate are really nice. The damage itself, nothing too extraordinary, right? She does have self-healing, which is pretty cool. But yeah, first skill, second skill, not that amazing in a lot of PvE content. If you want to use her for the ultimate, go ahead, right? But yeah, overall, not a massive fan of her so far from what I've tested, right? And I did go and buy 5 dupes for her, essentially like a unit plus all 5 dupes. And still, like, I couldn't find much use in any of the PvE content that I've tried. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm gonna place her in C tier. Definitely has some use, right? Very niche specific scenarios, but nothing too amazing overall, right? And yeah, in the end, this is the PvE tier list, in my opinion, right? Again, keep in mind, this is based on my experience playing the game. Again, I've been playing since day 1. I've leveled up every single unit, so I have played with every single unit you see here quite a bit, right? Some more, some less. Of course, I'm talking about these units, right? Like, come on. Yeah, I tried to make them work. Now that I look at it, they look identical. But yeah, overall, when it comes to PvE, this is, in my opinion, the tier list based on the current, like, high level end game PvE content, right? S tiers, all S tiers are pretty much a must build. A tiers, very solid. B tiers have their own use, right? In quite a few scenarios. C tiers are either not that amazing or have very niche uses, especially like these last 3 units. and D tiers, honestly, you're never gonna use them in PvE ever, right? So yeah, as you can see, a lot of 4-stars. A lot of 4-stars are high up there, especially STEIN and PLUTO, right? And I would probably say him, one of the most important ones as well. So yeah, when it comes to PvE, don't sleep on the Nat 4s. A lot of Nat 4s are much stronger than quite a bit of 5-star units in this game, and yeah, I definitely wouldn't underestimate a lot of them, right? And yeah, whether you agree, whether you disagree, feel free to leave a comment. I'm curious to see other people's perspective as the game evolves, right? Of course, as new units come out, the tiers might shift quite a bit, and I might make an updated one when we have like 10 different new units or something like that, right? So yeah, we'll see how it works out. Feel free to subscribe if you want to stay tuned for more the Memento content. I'm gonna be pumping videos every day, maybe like 2 times per day, especially for the first week of the game. And yeah, PvP tier list is coming probably in a few days, right? I know that PvP won't be a big focus at first, and majority of the people will be PvE focused for the first few weeks of the game. So yeah, putting out the PvE tier list first. PvP 1 is coming soon after, and yeah, stay tuned and hope you enjoyed, and peace.